Now, this leads us quite nicely into our next session, which is a series of short presentations on circular finance. And I'm delighted to welcome four speakers to this session, which will take us on over the next hour or so. The first speaker is Joseph Capurso. Joe is Head of International Economics in the Commonwealth Bank of Australia's Global Economic and Market Research team. He joined the CBA in 2005 from the Economic Division of the Prime Minister's Department, and then was an economist in the CBA's Australian Economic Research team before his current role. Joseph and his team are involved in monitoring and forecasting trends in foreign economies and drawing implications for central banks' policy and currencies. And the team also analyzes the economic and financial market impacts of ESG issues. I'm really pleased to be welcoming Joe here today, where he will be unpacking the work that CBA has been doing on the circular economy. So it's over to you, Joe, if you're ready to share your screen. You're on mute, Joe. Still on mute, unfortunately. There you go.
How's that? Hi, Carme. Hello, everyone. So I've got issues with PowerPoint today, unfortunately. So there goes my great idea for having a short slide set. Carme, I've just forwarded my slides to Caitlin. If you could grab them off her and share them, that would be really good. But I'll just get started anyway. So look, the basic ideas I wanted to get across today is just a banker's perspective on what the circular economy is. I think the circular economy as a finance and finance has a lot of upside. I think one of the good things to focus on. Thank you, Carme. One of the good things to focus on is, if you can go to the second slide, Carme, is to just sort of say up front that environmental sustainability and economic sustainability are really just part of the same thing. You can't have one without the other. So environmental sustainability, you need to have economic sustainability, or you can think of it as commercial sustainability. And to have economic sustainability, you need environmental sustainability at the same time. So I think these two things go hand in hand. And I think the circular economy framework is an excellent way to think about the intersection between the environment and the economy. They are heavily reliant on each other, and they need each other to ensure sustainability of each other. If you could also just go to the next slide. Thanks, Carme. It looks like that slide's going to take a little while to feed up. So the way I sort of see the intersection between the economy and the environment is just to think of how the existing linear economy works. So in the linear economy, economic growth is just strongly linked with material use. So in this chart here, the blue line is global economic growth, and the red line is material use. And the idea of a circular economy is to de-link that strong link. So in other words, you can still have economic growth without and including consumption, without a big call on material use. So for me, the aim of a circular economy is not slower economic growth or consumption, but rather to have strong economic growth and just limit the impact on the environment. If you go to the next page, please. So one thing I'm really conscious of, particularly working in finance is if you have an objective, you need to be able to measure it. So the panelists earlier, Carme, were talking, you're asking the question, how would you define circular economy investments? So I'm a big believer in keeping things broad, simple and measurable. So here's my idea for a circular economy investment, and that's an activity that reduces material use. So there's 6 words for you. I think that sort of really simply captures what a circular economy is. Now, this chart here shows you Australia's material footprint. Now, it doesn't include everything, such as water, for example, but it does. I think it does include most things when we think about the economy and the environment. And you can see there you've got the measures of fauna and flora. That's the blue ones. You've got metal use, and you've got fossil fuel use, and you've got construction materials. And you can see that's been trending higher for a number of decades now. And as you know, the extracting, using and disposing of these materials is what does damage to the environment. So to have a more circular economy in Australia, we've got to get these numbers down. And the closer you get to zero, the more circular you are. So it just sort of reinforces that point that we've got to be able to measure our success. And investors, while they're keen to get involved, they really need to be able to measure success and failure. If you go to the next slide, please. So I've had a go at, if you go, that's it, thank you. The numbers aren't coming up on mine, on my slides that I can see, but I'll push on. So I've had a tentative go, and I emphasise the word tentative here, of measuring how circular the Australian economy is by using the 4 Rs of reduce, reuse, recycle and recover. So we can measure how much materials Australia extracts. So that's, think of that as the mining and agriculture industries, how much we import from other industries, how much we use in our own economy, and how much we export to other countries. We can also measure rates and the like, some components of the 4 Rs. And of course, we can measure waste and emissions to the air. And so when you pull all of those things together, you can measure Australia's circularity rate, which is on the next slide, Carme. And so this chart, the red bar on the right-hand side, just shows you my estimate, tentative estimate of Australia's material circularity rate. So that's 4 to 5%. Compared to the globe, which is about 8 or 9%, it's quite low. And of course, just comparing to several European countries, Australia is a long way behind. So what that Australia's low circularity rate means that let's call it 95% of the resources that we use are what you might call virgin materials. We're only reusing about 5% of existing materials. So again, this is another way that investors can focus on a quantitative target. And I think having a quantitative target is really important to incentivise people's participation. We go to the next slide, please. So how do we transition from our 5% circularity rate to something much, much higher? And even something that approaches what's going on in the Netherlands would be a very big deal in Australia. And the way I see it, there are 3 main players here, and the main players are broadly defined. So when I say government, I don't just mean the Australian national government. I mean all the different levels of governments, and I also mean governments in other countries, not just in Australia. And I think the proper role of governments is to introduce targets. So back to quantitative targets. Enforce rules, and governments can also get involved with taxes and subsidies to discourage tax extraction and encourage the 4 Rs of reuse, recycle and recover. I don't think necessarily you need a lot of government money involved. I think there are some risks involved in government money getting involved. For example, governments have a lot of other things to spend money on, not just circular economy activities. And the annual budget sessions mean that programs can be cut. So I think there's probably more chance of success in embedding the circular economy for the private sector is involved. I think another really important element of the transition to a circular economy is broadly defined research. So these might be people in CSIRO and universities, but also engineers and scientists in private industry as well. And their job or their objective is to design new products and processes to spread the 4 Rs throughout all industries. And I think that the third element, which we touched on in the previous panel discussion, but I think can be leveraged much more, is finance. That might be banks, or it might be private equity or venture capital or superannuation funds and the like. So their role is to lend and to invest into both new business models, but also to help existing businesses to transition. There seems to be a lot of discussion about not buying products or sort of having like a buyer's strike against certain companies. But I think you get more success if you just help with existing companies to transition from their not sustainable, from their linear business model to a circular business model. You can't just sort of start with a clean slate today and start again. I think it's really important to help businesses currently in the economy, as well as new emerging businesses as well. Next slide, please, Carmen. And this slide just shows you just how much, or 2 things. Number one, how much money is being directed into environmental and social causes. So that's what, $1.6 trillion last year. That's in 1 year, there was $1.6 trillion. So that's an enormous amount of money by the comparison of, say, the size of Australia's economy. That is, roughly speaking, that $1.6 trillion is about as big as all the income generated in Australia in a single year. So it's big compared to the Aussie economy, but it's very small compared to the amount of money that is assets under management, which, depending on the sources, somewhere in the order of $100 trillion. So 1.6 trillion compared to, let's call it 100 trillion, is still a very small amount, but it's growing very rapidly. The last 5 or 6 years, it's been growing at more than 6 per year. Now, Carme had some interesting figures in her presentation earlier, where she said there's about $10 billion funds under management for circular economy purposes. So circular economy is very, very small, even in this rapidly growing part of funds management. And I just want to emphasise again, I think that the chances of success are going to be increased significantly if the private sector is more heavily involved. And our panelists earlier were, 2 of them were in the private sector, but I think that the idea is to spread it throughout private sector funds management, and with a focus on circular economy. Next slide, please. So I think circular economy proponents can learn a lot from those that have been campaigning to address climate change via reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I think just sort of as made earlier, I think one really important thing would just be to set a time limit, or a time objective. Doesn't have to be a limit. So the time that we've got for net zero emissions of greenhouse gases is, for rich countries, it's 2050. So that I think that objective, that time objective, is really important, because it incentivizes behaviours today to reach that limit in 3 decades' time. Another thing that I think we can learn, circular economy components can learn from the climate change and carbon dioxide debate is that governments can set up a market for the right to emit carbon dioxide. So we should be able to do something similar for material use more broadly, not just carbon dioxide emissions. So I think that would go away to providing a financial framework that corporates, whether they be financial or non-financial corporates, can operate in. Another one, which is a real favourite of mine, is while governments set up the markets for the right to emit carbon dioxide, they also set the quantitative limit on carbon dioxide. So they can do the same sort of thing in other materials markets as well. And they can allow the market to set the price on material use that takes into account the externalities. So I think there's an enormous amount that we can learn from what looks like, at least so far, success in reducing, in setting up a carbon market with a carbon price, and that incentivises behaviour to not pay the carbon price, because everything that we're trying to achieve in circular economy is about changing behaviour. So if you have a price of using materials that includes the externalities, people are going to change their behaviour to avoid paying that price, just like they do with the carbon price and carbon intensive goods processes. And I think another thing that a carbon price will also incentivise investments and innovation in new cleaner technologies that use less materials. So I said at the start that I think a good definition for circular economy investments is an activity that reduces material use, and a price of materials that includes the externalities, I think, would be really, really helpful. Next slide, thanks, Carme.
And Joe, just a time check that we've got about a minute left.
Okay, I might miss on this chart then, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
I'll skip over it. So here, just to get my economist hat on here, just to say it's not all bright lights ahead. Many, all countries, or near after all countries, are really trying to scale up their investments in, and of course, clean transport and clean electricity uses metals, and quite a substantial part. And of course, the cost of these inputs have gone up a very long way. So that shows you. But, it's not going to be an easy transition, even though I think using the market is the best. I might just flick over to the next slide.
Thanks, Joe. And you might need to lean a bit closer to the mic because I think you're cutting in and out a little bit in the last minute.
So this is just to the next this slide, the next two slides just show you a list of some of the work that my team and others in Commonwealth Bank Research have been producing the last 2 years. So we do take sustainable economics research very seriously. We've written about 30 odd reports, almost 30 reports in the last few years. If you go to the last slide, Carme, for those that are interested that want to read these reports, you can. Almost all of them are on this website, that hyperlink there, and they're available. Almost all of them are available to anyone. Thanks a lot, Carme.
Thanks, Joe. And also should credit Caitlin for managing the slides. It was actually her in the background, not me. But thank you so much for a really insightful presentation. I think it's a bit scary to realize that Australia is still only around 4 to 5% circular, because it shows us that we do have quite a long way to go. There are quite a number of questions coming up through the Q&A feed. If we have time towards the end of the combined session, we'll do a Q&A with the panelists or the presenters. I suspect that we might be running a bit short on time. So Joe, if you're inclined to, or if you are able to, you can jump into the chat and maybe address some of the questions that we'll post on your presentation. But in the meantime, I am really delighted to welcome our next speaker, who is Eduardo Sabatino from Intesa Sanpaolo. Eduardo is the VP in charge of Sustainable Finance Deals at Intesa Sanpaolo, Corporate and Investment Banking Division in APAC. He's based in the Hong Kong hub of the CNIB division. So thank you for making it to our forum all the way from Hong Kong. He is also focused on the sustainable value creation for all stakeholders in the Asia-Pacific region. Eduardo has spent a great deal of his career working in the innovation sector, formerly in Accenture, and since 2015 in Intesa Sanpaolo, where he managed big data and artificial intelligence projects in this area, as well as working in Intesa Sanpaolo Innovation Center. So over to you, Eduardo.
Carmei, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It's such a great pleasure to be here, joining this amazing forum, acting all together to shape our new ecosystem. I guess all of us are thinking about what kind of world do we want to live in. And we all know that we somehow inherited a sick world. Climate change will have a dramatic impact on our ecosystem. And our mission is to change the way business is done. We must not conquer nature, we must live on it. And the fact that all of us are joining this 2 days event is because we are willing to make a change. And I believe this is so powerful, isn't it? Well, yeah, as Carmei said, I work for Intesa Sanpaolo. I'm very proud of working for a financial institution very and strongly committed to circular economy transition. I will try to guide you through our journey on circular economy in the next slides. So just, I'll try to share my desktop. Please, if you can tell me if you are able to see my screen. Could you see my screen, the presentation?
Yes, you can.
Amazing, lovely. So, Intesa Sanpaolo today is among the top financial institution in Europe. In terms of market cap, we rank among the top 3 in the Eurozone with very strong capital ratios and a very strong and reliable source of funding. We do business across different units, from commercial banking to corporate investment banking, to insurance and asset management. And especially if we look at our international network, we have a very strong focus on Europe, where we have several branches, but we do business on international level thanks to our network of the corporate investment banking division. In particular, in New York, in London, in Dubai, and in Hong Kong, where I'm based in. By looking at our positioning in Asia Pacific, we cover most of the countries, and of course, Australia is one of our key markets for the following years, especially by looking at circular economy and green transition. We do provide different products and services for our customers, both the European ones that are keen to generate and develop business in Asia Pacific, but we especially support our Asia Pacific clients. Most of them are multinationals that are either keen to develop business in their respective country, or also looking at entering other markets in the globe. And as I said previously, our commitment really comes from the top. Our top management decided to adopt and embrace circular economy principles in our corporate strategy. And we started this journey a long time ago. And this is very important because if we look at all the different disruptions that happened in the previous 10 years, some of them were, let me say, bottom up, right? Where instead, if we look at circular economy transition, if we look at the green transition, this must be embedded from the corporate strategy down to the top of the business. In order to boost our reach and our market and our vision on circularity, we proudly joined the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which of course all of us are quite aware of, but let me just remark the importance of the foundation as the leading organization worldwide that deals with circular economy. And we are proud to be a strategic partner of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And we do a lot of activities in order to boost the adoption of circularity within our customer base, but also dealing with institutions where we do business. But let's have a quick look at the sustainable finance market trend, because this is key. I'm very conscious about time, so I will try to speed up a little bit. And in case you have some questions, please feel free to reach me privately or in the chat. So let me just say that we have all seen in the previous 12 months, especially 24 months, the great attention that has been placed on environmental, social, and governance principles. And those corporates that have been able to embed such principles in their corporate strategy, they have achieved a greater investor appeal, hence an improved liquidity and credit standing, both at domestic and international markets. And 2021 has been really a record year across different asset classes. Here, according to Refinitiv, you can see the trend of sustainable bonds and sustainable loan on a global perspective, where the market achieved $770 billion US dollar on sustainable lending, which is an amount equivalent to 3 times more the value of the previous year, which is stunning. Sustainable bonds, well, we achieved 1 trillion, an increase of about 45%. And finally, M&A, a market which is growing really, really fast, also given the increase on new technologies and new business models that are emerging thanks to innovation and startup ecosystem, which is growing really a lot. Of geographical split, if we look at sustainable loan, the market is mainly focused in Europe, followed by the Americas, and finally we have the Asia Pacific. But from our standpoint, we believe that in the forthcoming 3 to 5 years, Asia Pacific will keep up with the main markets, and there might be also some instances where actually Asia Pacific will lead the market on this transition. And on sustainable bond instead, we can see that the market is mostly focused on Europe, and then let's say that Asia Pacific has a more relevant role. What is really interesting here, if you look at the chart on at the center, you see the different trends across the different kind of bonds. And green bond is of course leading the market, but then there is a very interesting increase on social bonds, which is absolutely interesting. And by the Australian market, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, there will be plenty of business opportunities related to the circular economy transition. $1.9 trillion which will lead the transition and generate and unleash benefits across the industries. Just let me put it on a context. If we look at the different industries, most of the benefits will be generated in the built environment, where there is an expectation of 773 billion, thanks to different benefits that might be generated. Let me just mention material savings, which we all see, right? The increasing cost of commodities. And of course, by embedding circular economy principles, this might generate a lot of savings, as well as on mobility and on other industries. But let me just go a little bit more in deep with Intesa Sanpaolo and our commitment to a livable world. Now I will share with you a video. Just please let me know if you are able to see and to hear the sound. Just give me a second. Okay.
Professor Terence Tao is the equivalent of a rock star in mathematics.
Regarded as the greatest mathematician.
Could you hear the sound?
We could, yes.
Hello?
Yes, we could.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Today, a car remains parked for 92% of its lifetime. Offices and workplaces are used less than 50% of their good. More than 30% of food production is wasted along the supply chain. We can foresee a future where by 2050, global population will grow by more than 2 billion. And in the oceans, there will be more plastic than fish by volume. We need to redesign existing products and industrial ecosystems, switching to an alternative model that decouples economic development from the exploitation of finite natural resources. Today, thanks to the activities of our Innovation Centre, we are ready to meet the challenges of circular economy, which is a new paradigm for economic and social development, restorative and regenerative by design. Since 2015, we're the only financial services global partner of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the most relevant player promoting the transition towards the circular economy. We're exploring new business applications in collaboration with our partners. Finance plays a key role in supporting investments for the transformation of current linear business models into circular ones by rethinking the approach to risk and value creation. That's why a circular economy for us is a matter of strategic innovation, not just sustainability. This is an amazing collective journey. Welcome on board. Use less than 50.
And yes, for us, it's really a strategic pillar to develop our business. And across the years, we have done different things. In our previous industrial plan, we created a platform, an internal fund of 6 billion euro in order to generate and to boost the financing and the banking of activities related to circularity. And recently we have launched our new industrial plan, where we have increased our commitment to 150 billion euros. And we are also very proud to have joined the Net Zero Banking Alliance in October 2021. As I said previously, we really work with institutions. Of course, with the European Commission, we are one of the leading financial institutions in providing our support and our expertise in the adoption of circular economy, but also in Asia Pacific, especially in Hong Kong. we are trying to boost our institutional activities. For instance, let me just mention that we created a Green and Circular Economy Committee at the Italian Chamber of Commerce, helping institutions and corporations in adopting circularity within their business. But we also partner with the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce and the European Chamber of Commerce in bridging, especially the taxonomy, the difference on taxonomy from the European markets and the Asia Pacific ones. All of these activities that I mentioned to you have brought us to be recognized by the most relevant ranking providers such as Bloomberg, CDP, MSCI, Sustainalytics as a leader on sustainable finance, which of course we are really proud of, but even more important is for us to share with our customers our vision, our expertise to help them achieving their ESG targets.
Time check. We'll need to wrap this up in the next half a minute or so.
Fantastic. So let me just go very quick on some of the services. Well, as we have seen on the video, we as Intesa Sanpaolo, we provide financial support to our customers, but also strategic support. And when we look at the strategic support, we leverage our innovation network, which is actually based and spread across the globe. And when we talk about circularity, we have different services that we provide, such as, well, the circular education, connection, and innovation, which do have different levels according to the strategy that our customers would like to adopt. And if we look at finance, well, we cover most of the most relevant financing facilities, from loan structuring, of course, green financing, sustainability-linked financing, and project finance, especially, where we have a very strong expertise in Australia, but also debt capital market, hedging, and circular economy solutions. 2021 has been a very successful year. We covered and we closed different transactions, and of course, we are more than keen to support customer and corporate transition toward the circularity and a more sustainable business model, thanks to our expertise. Thank you so much for your attention. I will be more than glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Eduardo. It's really interesting to hear about the scale of developments in Europe, especially. So hopefully that kind of activity will arrive here in the Asia Pacific in the not too distant future. Next, I'd like to introduce you to our final two presenters, who are Dr. Maria Balabat and Karen Koblenz from UNSW and UTS. Maria is a senior lecturer at UNSW. Her research interests include environmental and social accounting, corporate reporting, and assurance of non-financial information, such as ESG and the value relevance of this information to capital markets. And Karen is a senior researcher at UTS Institute for Sustainable Futures, where she is focused on sustainable finance. And they are joint authors of a paper on the identification and measurement of circular assets and risks for the finance and investment sector in transitioning to a circular economy. So over to the two of you.
Thanks, Carmela, and thanks so much to New South Wales Circular for giving UTS and UNSW the opportunity to undertake this important research. Carmela already mentioned our rapid review research task. I know we're somewhat short on time, so we'll try to get through our presentation quite quickly, but it is the identification and measurement of circular assets and risks that's relevant to the finance and investment sector in the transition to a circular economy. Although Maria and I will be speaking today, it's important to note that there's a whole team of different researchers that have been involved in the project with us. My colleague Kriti from UTS, John, Peter, and Lotja from UNSW, as well as a whole team of academic expert reviewers that have given additional advice on the report. Before we start, it's important to note that we've approached this research from the perspective of finance and investment being an important enabler in the transition from the current linear to a circular economy. And it's really about using finance to help address New South Wales sustainability goals. So what we'll be presenting today, Maria will speak briefly about the research. I'll talk about some of the key findings around the areas that we focused on in global initiatives and linear risks. I'll hand them back to Maria, who'll speak about the built environment. And then we'll both very briefly cover the proposed program of work and some takeaways.
Thanks, Karen. I might just jump in quickly here to say we've got some feedback that your audio is coming through relatively softly. So if you're able to increase the pickup, that'll be great. Sorry, back to you.
Try to do that.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Maria, do you want to speak about the research? Maria, you might be on mute.
Okay, sorry, I'm having some technical issues here. So I would just like to say that the collaboration between UTS and Institute of Sustainable Futures, and of course this UNSW Business School, and the approach that we did for this rapid review is a desktop research wherein we look at key academic literature and gray literature, and we used a number of academic literature, but we noticed some shortages, I suppose. So there are not that many in the academic literature that we have used in this rapid review. That's all. Over to you, Karen.
Sorry, I was on mute. Financial markets are globally integrated, so it's important to look at global initiatives, try and identify and measure circularity. Overall, these are in early stages, but rapidly evolving. There are a number of organizations that have been looking at the topic of financing circularity, including the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. These have all identified some of the key barriers around lack of standard definitions and metrics. The real driver, though, of financing the circular economy has been the European Union. So with the goal to direct investment in support of the European Green Deal, where the transition to a circular economy is a key environmental objective. And the EU really see the circular economy as being key to relieving pressure on all of its environmental goals, including climate pollution and biodiversity. The EU is driving progress through what's called an EU taxonomy. This is a classification system of sustainable economic activities. So for the circular economy, it's to direct investment to circular projects. Other important initiatives are from the International Capital Market Association through the Green Bond Principles, as well as through UNEP Finance Initiative through the Principles for Responsible Banking. All have recently released guidance on the circular economy, and all are globally relevant. Important to note also that other global taxonomies are currently under development, including in Australia. These are primarily focused on climate and only relatively limited circular economy. To identify circular assets, all three of these organizations have a focus on circular business models. This is a sector, using the Value Hill business model tool for guidance. This is a sector-agnostic business tool that depicts value in the circular economy. There are 4 high-level business category groups, ranging from circular design, i.e. designing out waste. Top of the Value Hill is optimal use, so that would be sharing models, product as a service, and then going down the Value Hill in value recovery and waste management. And other models are more supportive enabling activities. I won't talk about the circular metrics. All organizations use the value whole for guidance, but they're all taking slightly different approaches to how they measure that. In terms of finance, ultimately the finance sector finances business. So what is the business sector doing to measure circularity? Well, there are various tools available, including from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Using these tools is an important first step for many businesses to consider circularity in their strategies. There's certainly a role for the finance sector can play in informing their customers, but what's unclear is how these tools are aligned with the finance sector initiatives. What is clear is that standardization definitions metrics will help drive circular finance and prevent greenwashing. It's important to incorporate circular measurement into existing accounting and reporting frameworks, and ultimately we need definitions that are globally harmonized and comparable, but also scientifically sound. Just briefly covering linear risks and the relevance to the finance sector. These are risks faced by businesses due to exposure to the current linear business practices, including business as usual around use of non-renewable resources, etc. There's certainly growing awareness that our current economic system is unsustainable, but not much is changing in business practices, and linear risks are not really being considered. Investors and lenders are exposed to linear risks in their portfolios, which can impact risk-return ratios and lead to devaluation of assets. The first step is to start to understand the differences between linear and circular business models and risks, including defining some of the different risk types, ranging from market, for example, in resource scarcity, operational and supply chains, legal and plastic bans, and reputation risks. A few organizations have developed approaches and matrices to help business, banks, and investors to identify and assess linear risks. These are addressed in the report. I won't speak too much on those. Some of the risk categories I've already spoken about. Most conventional risk assessment frameworks do not address linear risks, and there are no standard metrics to quantify these risks and their potential impact. Surprisingly, there's also limited research on linear risks and circularity as a risk mitigant. Some work has been done in Italy, including with Intesa Sanpaolo, to consider some of the benefits of circular strategies on risk and returns. There's also been strong leadership from the Netherlands, who are targeting becoming fully circular by 2050. Last month, the Dutch Central Bank, working with local banks and investors, released a circular finance roadmap with 4 action areas, including linear risks. A number of things that the finance sector can do, including start to consider linear risks and risk assessment frameworks, supporting business to transition to the circular economy, and requiring better corporate disclosure on linear risks. And we also see a role for research to build the evidence base and develop frameworks. So that was a very high-level overview of both global initiatives and linear risk, and I'll hand over to Maria, who will talk to you about the built environment.
Thank you very much, Karen. I would like to start this section with a quote by transforming us to use a circular economy lens on the built environment sector. Imagine a key conceptual shift is to think of the buildings not just for their primary purpose, but also as a method of storing thousands of tons of valuable products and materials, which can be traded and reused at the end of the building's life. The sector is a significant large consumer of resources, as Eduardo has highlighted in his presentation, and business as usual produces waste that could be recycled and end up in landfill, increasing the construction costs from landfill taxes in certain jurisdictions. Demand for construction is estimated to grow with rising urbanization, and the sector will require 2 to 3 planets worth of resources to sustain our current lifestyle. Next slide, please. There are existing tools in the sectors that have been adopted to support a circular economy, and a few are listed on this slide. You've got life cycle assessment or accounting, or LCA, material flow analysis, environmental product disclosure. LCA is widely used tool to quantify environmental benefits of circular economy strategies in the sector. An example of how the various stages in the building life cycle is shown on the diagram. And this diagram was prepared by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And each dimension could be developed as a quantifiable key performance indicator for the circular economy to evaluate its performance. Building information modeling is another tool, and it's a digital tool that can integrate design, engineering materials data to improve circular economy outcomes. There are voluntary and mandatory strategies and frameworks as well that the sector has adopted to transition to a circular economy. Research and case studies show that stakeholders still perceive that the value in circular buildings reside mostly in market differentiation, making it harder to measure economic return on investment. There is a need to highlight economic value case to move forward to a circular economy, and circular strategies must translate to positive outcomes. This will require a change in current business models. Funders, owners, and occupiers will be driving this shift. Designers, architects, and suppliers will be crucial to creating circular solutions at the front end. Long-term thinking and breaking down the silos between these actors will also be required for the circular economy to take off. One of the most significant policy initiatives is the new Circular Economy Action Plan for Sustainable Built Environment released by the EU as part of its Green Deal. The plan aims to increase material efficiency, reduce climate impacts, and promote circularity throughout the building life cycles. The EU is yet to launch a comprehensive strategy for sustainable environment. With a plethora of performance assessment tools developed in the linear economy, investors are looking for reliable and proven measures to support claims of sustainable investments. There is scope to utilize existing building rating schemes, such as Green Star and Neighbors, through GRESB assessment results, for example. This diagram here shows how rating schemes feed into GRESB assessment that can be leveraged by issuers and investors for green bonds. Investors also want to see ESG impact economic returns over longer periods, resulting in the growth in sustainability-linked loans. Sustainability-linked loans has a broader focus than green bonds. These loans will open the capital market to companies that are serious about their long-term sustainability strategy and lasting social and environmental commitments, such as transitioning to a circular economy. In terms of best practice example, there are numerous examples of how circular economy creates value for capital providers to attract investment inflows. We selected Lendlease as a showcase, being a global organization based in New South Wales, as one of the leaders in implementing circular economy and at the same time creating value for its financial capital providers. The Barangaroo South development in Sydney CBD has various features that support circularity in the Australian built environment. Lendlease is also a significant issuer of green bonds, having issued over $1 billion Australian dollars of green bonds in Australia and the UK markets, as well as sustainability-linked loans. Lendlease also leads in business reporting, adopting integrated reporting since 2016. This business reporting is an evolving one and looks into how resources are used as inputs, including natural capital, to create value for the organization. As impacts of human habitation has exceeded the planet's ecological capacity and continuing growth in population and urbanization, a paradigm shift is now necessary, and we have tried to map the circular transition risks in our report. And this diagram indicates integrating ESG pillars with finance as necessary components to allow circular economy a chance to function. When integrating these components, natural capital or the environmental attributes must be valued accordingly to account for depletion of resources, positive and negative outcomes to society. I leave you with another quote to ponder on. Circular economy provides a necessary alternative to the linear economy, but the complexity of a circular economy, in contrast to the simplicity of the entrenched linear economy, creates a barrier to acceptance across the broader economic community. Over to you, Karen.
You're on mute, Karen.
Sorry, thank you. Thanks, Maria. We've identified a number of next steps for future work that have come out of the research, including definitions and finding a common language for circular finance relevant not only in the global context, but also for Australia. Circular metrics, leveraging off of the work that's already being done around metrics and applying those to business and finance. And developing linear risk identification and measurement tools. And last but not least, it's very important to focus also on education and professional development, given these will play a key role in growing circular finance. Maria?
Yes, and continuing on from the built environment perspective, we propose the following work program: examining evidence of circular initiatives in the built environment at the meso level, assess the effectiveness of financial and evaluation tools of the circular economy in real estate, evaluate the use of technology in the collection and management of databases for materials over the building life cycle, and perform a cost-benefit analysis for the built environment cycle.
So we'll just leave you with a few key takeaways. Adoption of the circular economy is still in the early stages, but global initiatives are occurring. These are relevant to the Australian finance sector, so it's important for the sector to start to educate itself on circular economy and circular finance, as much as that's not happening already. Further research on circular economy as a de-risking strategy for linear risk, as well as other sustainability risks, and expanding existing risk tools to incorporate circular economy and linear risk are also an important next step. Given the built environment is a significant contributor to resource use and waste, financial institutions can also focus on this sector and to see how to better incorporate circularity. Ultimately, education and further research will play a key role for finance to enable the transition to a more circular economy. We'd be pleased to work again with New South Wales Circular, as well as collaborate more broadly with the finance and business sectors to progress this work. And finally, thank you very much for listening. Both Maria and I are happy to take any questions or comments either through New South Wales Circular or directly to us.
Thanks, Maria and Karen. It's been really valuable hearing you talk us through, this review of identification and measurement of circular assets and risks. We are running out of time, unfortunately, so if you are able to jump into the Q&A chat to address any questions that you feel like you'd like to respond to, that would be great. However, I just also want to remind the audience that you'll get links to all of the rapid reviews, including this one at the conclusion of this forum. So you will be able to access more details on what Karen and Maria have been talking about. So a big thanks to all of our speakers for sharing their presentations, their research and their insights with us. I'll now throw over to Lisa, who will take us out to the morning break.
Thank you so much, Carme, and thank you to all the panelists. Yes, we're really proud of this research by UTS and UNSW with our Finance and Investment Task Force on including those linear risks and valuing and circular benefits. So thank you for that. I think you'll all agree with me. It's been a really insightful series of discussions, Carme, run by you, about how to incentivize investment. We've heard about the need for price signals like waste levies, synchronizing them and embedding these into state and national targets. We heard food and agriculture are big circular economics, circular opportunities, rather, not just anaerobic digestion with organic waste energy, but also alternative protein sources. We heard also how big that Australian sea investment market opportunity is, way behind the leader Europe. And we also heard a banker's view that we can leverage this opportunity in Australia if we set up a market with an aspiration to reduce and measure material use a lot closely. And finally, Carme, most importantly, we heard of the need to change the way we do business. So some inspiration from Intesa Sanpaolo and their world's biggest circular economy fund, which has embedded circular economy in its strategic plan. So some inspiration and takeouts for you. We are going to go to a break now, just a few minutes behind, and we'll return with presentations from New South Wales Circular's Industry Task Force, hosted by its chair, Joyanne Manning, a principal at Arup, which we're very much looking forward to. So see you back here at 11:15 and enjoy your cup of coffee or tea.